Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning our topic is no day like that day. No day like that day. And we're speaking here in reference to the day in which the sun stood still. And we see that as a kind of foretaste to the day when Yeshua himself was crucified. Now, having worked in the court system, both as a counselor and a victim's advocate, I have long since been acquainted with the process of justice. A man is charged and brought to court. Evidence for and against him are presented by the attorneys, and the gallery of people listen therein to what is being said. That said evidence is dutifully arranged in the consideration of that man's situation. Some are admissible and some are inadmissible. It is a process of inquiry and examination of the facts. That's the way the court system works. Thereafter, a verdict is pronounced, which seems commensurable with justice that could not have been avoided. And therefore, one could not conceive that the society, indeed jurisprudence, would tolerate anything less. We demand justice in the society in which we live. We want to see the evidence, so we claim. We want to know. We want to be in the know. That's what we bemoan. There would be an outrage, would they not, should any of the officials in the court daringly consider a man guilty, withholding all the evidence, but such that would favor their verdict. There would be an outrage to say they have withheld the evidence and have deceived us. But so often, like pre-literate people, we allow theories and beliefs of erudite, scholarly, lettered, literate, and intellectual, sophisticated people, men of repute and prominence, to shape our thinking, to teach us things that when we look and we find a different perspective in the scriptures, we have difficulty in believing it. We do. And so these lettered men, these men of repute, these scientists, these men who claim to be in the know while pretending to explain the mysteries of this created world, they sometimes provide evidence that contradicts the Creator's own word. Yes, they write convincingly, but how deducible are their fanciful theories? How? We hold these fanciful theories and we teach them as truth. And if ever you should question their theory, they are quick to regard you as a village nitwit, a knave, even a simpleton, if you question what they teach. And so this morning, I want you to take off your rose-colored glasses, because we wear myopia as we do spectacles. We do. We often wear these myopias on the bridge of our noses, pretending to be intellectual heavyweights. And we look at the world through these myopic glasses. And therefore, I want you to blindfold your biases this morning. Put them on the blinkers, so they may not see that which you have believed, so that we can focus upon the word of Yahweh. In that case, I would like for you to come with me to the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, and we will look at a few verses in chapter 20. And the reason for that is that you and I have been taught that the world in which we live is spherical. It's a sphere. It is round, it's a globe, and it spins at well over 1,000 miles an hour. We're taught that. And that this heliocentric world is a world in which the sun is the center of the universe, and all the other luminaries, all the other bodies, planets, they revolve around the sun. That's what we're taught. And so we want to look at that, and we dare not question these lettered men from Harvard, from Oxford, from Cambridge, men who have letters after their name, and they work for NASA. And we make the assumption that when we read of these people in the Word of Yah, these men who were inspired by Yah, that they did not have the telescopes and they did not have the machinery and the technology that these men have. And so we are prone to believe these men and reject the word of Yah. We're prone to do that. And so this morning we just want to spend a little time to look at the word of Yah and juxtapose that with what some of the scientists have said. We owe that to ourselves. We have a duty of care to ourselves, and indeed to other people who rely upon what we say. There is a responsibility. And so the word says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, it says, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Do that. And so we want to look to some extent at the orbital resonance of the planets in terms of the relationship that they have with each other, particularly the sun, the moon, and the earth. In our inquiry this morning, we want to look at that. But first, let's read a few verses from 1 Samuel chapter 20. And I will read from verse 4. Then said Jonathan unto David, whatever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. David, you know that you're my friend, and there isn't anything that I wouldn't do for you. You know that, David. And David said unto Jonathan, behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. but let me go that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at evening. Let me do that. Now, let's look at that text. As I indicated earlier, that David did not have a telescope. He did not. He did not have the technology that the contemporary scientists have. So the question emerges, how did David know that tomorrow would be the new moon? Was David talking about that sighting the sliver of the moon, or was he talking about the conjunction the day before? How did he know? I cite that simply to advance the argument that too often we look back at these men and think they are from the village and they are not from these great universities, so they didn't know so much. They didn't know. But these men, they studied the stars. They knew the planets. They knew far more than the average person knows now. If I were to say to you, go outside tonight and by looking at the stars, see if you can identify Pleiades, would you be able to do it? No. Would you be able to show me the Big Dipper? Would you be able to show me Mars, Mercury? And perhaps the answer is you wouldn't be able to. But they were able to. These men, they studied the star. And last week we discussed that the wise men who came from the east, they said, we had seen the star and we have followed the star. We know when the king was to be born. They knew. And yet we dismiss these men as country yokels, because they did not have the technology and the machinery and things that we use today, the telescopes. And so we dismiss them. But clearly here we see that King David knew that the day after would be the new moon. He knew that. Oh yes. And so to this day we want a kind of zetetic inquiry into the word of Yah. Because on Wednesday we studied that John, Yohanan, made it clear that this word, the word in the beginning was with Yah. And the word was Yah. And that word became flesh and dwelt among us. John is simply saying, in the beginning, the word was in Yah's mouth. And when he spoke the word, every time he spoke, Yeshua comes out of his mouth. And the word is self-executory. And this word that we're reading is a reduction of the person Yeshua onto pages we call the Bible. It's a reduction in print. And so when you reject this, you are rejecting the Messiah himself. And the word came unto that prophet, and that prophet, it is no less than Yeshua in reduction to word, his voice. The voice of Yah is Yeshua. John says that. And he came and he dwelt among us. Many of us have Bibles in our homes. He's dwelling. And we're reading. But we're not understanding. Because we are prone to believe what the lettered men have said. He comes to you, she comes to you with a master's degree and a PhD. And we're in awe of them. And they tell you that you're living in a world that is spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour. And common sense doesn't even wake you up and ask you a question. We who here live in Florida, we're used to storms. We are. We're used to hurricanes, typhoons. And we see when the wind comes and it blows, how the water behaves and the tree, how they behave. And if you think of that, think then of this, that a world that is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour is suddenly stop. What would happen? Well, think of it this way. If it were possible for you to drive your car at 500 miles an hour and then you brake, you slam those ABS brakes on, what would happen? With that in mind, let's turn to the book of Joshua, Yeshua. The book of Joshua, and let's dilate upon the 10th portion of that book. We have a situation here where Joshua is fighting. And he needs more time. He's running out of daylight. And we want to look at this in the context of what they've already taught us. That we live in an heliocentric world. And as I read the scriptures, I see pictures of a geocentric world. Where it's not so much the sun that is the center of the world, but the earth. And perhaps that's breaking news for you. And that's why I earlier asked you to blindfold your biases. So that as we look into the word of Yah, we may do what? We may prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. And so we want to look at the theology of celestial mechanics. That's what we want to really look at this morning. Just the theology of it. We're not astronomers, no. But we want to look at the theology of that this morning. So Joshua is fighting, and remember, he's fighting with 5 kings. Now, if your mind serves you right, you would jump all the way back to Genesis chapter 14, when Abraham fought with 5 kings and killed Chedorlaomer, and Melchizedek came out to meet him. You remember that? Well, Joshua here is notice the name Joshua. It is really Yeshua, and he's a forerunner to what Yeshua is coming to do. And so when I said there was no day like that day, I'm talking about 2 days in one. That's what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the day when Joshua commanded the sun to stand still. And I'm also dealing with the day when the sun decided that I would not show my light because the Messiah, the light of the world, is crucified that day. So it's 2 days in one. That day. And so the word here in Joshua 10, come with me and let us look at verse 11 first. It says, "And it came to pass as they fled from before Israel and were in the going down to Beth Oron, that Yahweh cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. There were more which died with hailstones than they which the children of Israel slew with the sword. Then spake Joshua to Yahweh in the day when Yahweh delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stood thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon." Did you get that? Joshua, this understudy of Moses, has now taken over the leadership of Israel. And perhaps I ought to introduce Joshua to you. Because in the book of Numbers, Yah said to Moses, "I want you to put some of your spirit, Moses, on him. Because I'm going to treat him in the same way, and I'm going to respect him with knowledge and with wisdom in the same way that I gifted you, Moses." So Joshua was not some Johnny just come lately. He had been an apprentice of Moses for quite some time. And now Yah had approved his leadership over Israel. Notice Moses is the lawgiver. That's what Moses is. And I'm speaking to the believers now, because some of you have a idea of saying, "Well, I've kept the law." It's good to keep the law. We're asked to keep the law. But notice here, the law will not get you into the promised land. Joshua means salvation. But salvation does. It is Joshua who brought the children of Israel into the promised land, because the word Joshua or Yeshua means Yah is salvation. And so Yeshua or Joshua wants to give these Amorites a good licking. But he's running out of time. You know, sometimes you want to do something and time is just not on your side. And you have to wait until the next day. But Joshua here, in verse 12, chapter 10, "Then spake Joshua to Yahweh in the day," this very day that I'm talking about. That's our subject. There is no day like that day when Yahweh delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand thou still up in Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon." Now, let's inquire and let's take off those myopic spectacles, rose-colored, that we look at the world so often through. And also, let us blindfold. Let us put in blinkers, our biases, so that we may do even as the Bereans did. Receive the word with all readiness of mind, and then go home and study for yourself to see if these things are so. Are you with me? And so the word says, Joshua, understand where I'm going with this, because they have taught us, and they have done so over a great period of time. And they have said to us, the world is a globe. And they are prone to send us computer images all the time to remind us that the world is round. They've done that. May I deposit this view based on the word of Yah? That this topic is discussed ad nauseum to the point where we become ignorantly sick of it because we refuse to listen to what the word of Yah says. Oh yes, because we have found, and we will see in a minute, that their presentation of the universe is not cogent to the text of the word. It's not cogent at all. Not. And somebody somewhere will say, so you don't believe in science? Are you with me? One thing about the moon, if you have noticed it, when you read about the moon, you get the impression that the moon has been in a cosmic conflict for years. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, every time you read and you see pictures sent to you, they show you that crater and that ditch and that scar. It is a luminary that is full of scars and craters, meaning that it's been in a fight because perhaps it has been hit by so many meteorites over the years. Are you with me? It's been in a battle. They talk about craters and scars and deep gullies on the moon. Joshua hoped this morning that this ad nauseum of an argument will provide more clarity for us. Oh yes, I hope so too, because we believe that the earth is related to the sun. Oh yes. Because they both exert gravitational influence on each. We understand that, isn't it? We believe that. But this morning I want to focus on Joshua. They say that the earth is a ball, it's spherical. But I hear Isaiah the prophet saying that Yahweh sits up on the circle of the earth. And I beg to suggest that a circle is not a sphere. A circle would be as a saucer is. It's a circular flat disc. That's what the scripture here is trying to tell us. If only we would look. Joshua did not seem to get it that the world that he's living in is spinning around The sun. Because notice what he says. He doesn't say, earth, stand still. He says, sun, stand still. And if Joshua is telling the sun and the moon to stand still, implicitly in that statement, Joshua is telling us it is the sun and the moon that revolves around the earth and not the other way around. But we find it offensive to believe Yah's word. And then they will tell you, well, Joshua, he was way back then, and he did not have the technology. He did not understand. You better stop that. Moses is a man who went on Mount Sinai, and he took dictation from Yahweh. And Yahweh said, that spirit that I put on you, Moses, put some on Joshua, because I'm going to treat him the same way, the same knowledge, the same wisdom, the same understanding, put it on him. And he now comes and he said, sun, stand still. And you tell me, no, the sun doesn't move. It is the other that move around the sun. The word says that which you're saying is not cogent with the word of Yah. Not cogent at all. Not at all. And so, we must look further. We have to. Because if that is not so, then what are we saying? In Genesis 1, Yah says, let there be light. And there was light. So, Mr. Scientist, how might you explain to me that there was light in the world before the sun was made, because the sun was not made until the fourth day of creation? How? How? How do you explain that? You also tell me that there are two poles. There is a north and there is a south pole. May I deposit the view that there's only one pole, and that's the north pole? Because you travel north of north, you end up in south, the circumference of which is the south. May I also postulate the view that that which you tell me is a continent, Antarctica? May I suggest that Job understood this, and Job knows that Antarctica is a circular that holds in the ocean, that it doesn't go any further. When Yah said, ocean, sea, you will not go any further. That's Antarctica doing its job. And therefore, we live, hear me, we live under a dome. I'm only going with the word of Yah. Are you with me? I'm trying to do that. I'm staying with the word of Yah. But they tell us differently. Oh, yes. They tell us that that's not the way it is. And the sun is 91 million miles away, and the moon 283 miles away. And they tell us that the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon. Isn't that what they told you? That's what they say. And we, like country yokels, nitwits, where I come from, they say, you must be daft to believe some of the things that they've said. And this is not to rubbish intelligent people who have researched things and call it science. No, no, no. No one could dismiss grounded science. But I cannot ignore the word of Yah. The word of Yah tells me that the man Enoch, he was the 7th generation from Adam. And his circumspection before Yah was such that Yah took him. Are you with me? His walk, he did not idle his time away. His walk with Yah was such that Yah took him and showed him, took him on a tour. And Uriel, his guide, showed him things. Oh yes. Showed him things. And so I want you to join me just here in the book of Enoch. You know, what's interesting, we're reading here from the book of Enoch this morning, and they tell us that this is an apocryphal book. Don't read it. But when I read the penultimate book of the Bible, that's the book of Jude, I see Jude. Remember, Jude is one of the half-brothers of the Messiah, and he's making repeated quotes from the book of First Enoch. Jude is doing that. And the church tells you, don't read it. Jude says he's quoting from the prophecies of Enoch. Now, why would they tell us not to do that? Why would they tell us not to read the word of Yah? If it is, I hear people say, well, it's because it is not inspired. And my question to that person is, were you inspired to make that comment? Mm-hmm. So Enoch, chapter 71. Enoch says, and it came to pass after this that my spirit was translated. His what? You didn't get me, Let me say that again for emphasis. And it came to pass that my spirit was translated. You still didn't get it? Let me try again. You remember that situation where when Yeshua died, Peter says, while the flesh was in the tomb, his spirit went into the prison to preach to those other spirits that were in prison. Enoch says that his spirit was translated. And so perhaps, I'm asking the question now, when people say Enoch went to heaven, Enoch is here telling us my spirit went. What is he saying? But I leave that. I'm not going to develop that thought right now because that's not the object of the exercise here. The exercise here is to tell you what happened here to Enoch, at least in thought. The word says, and it ascended into the heavens. And I saw the holy sons of Yah. He saw the angels, as mentioned in Job, the sons of Yah. These are the angels. They were stepping on flames of fire. Their garments were white, and their raiment. And their faces shone like snow, and I saw 2 streams of fire, and the light of that fire shone like hyacinth. And I fell on my face before Yah of spirit, and the angel Michael, one of the archangels, seized me by my right hand. Did you hear me? He said, Michael is an archangel. Sometimes we have said, and others have said, this is Yeshua. Enoch says, this is an archangel. And usually people say, well, Michael means one who is like Yah. John may look like Harry, but John is not Harry. Verse 3. And the angel Michael, one of the angels, seized me by my right hand and lifted me up and led me forth into all the secrets. How many secrets? All the secrets. And he showed me all the secrets of righteousness, and he showed me all the secrets of the ends of the heaven, and all the chambers of all the stars and all the luminaries. He saw what? All the luminaries, whence they proceed before the face of the Holy One, and he translated my spirit into the heavens of heaven, and I saw there, as it were, a structure built of crystals. And between these crystals, tongues of living fire, and my spirit saw the girdle which girt the house of fire. And on its four sides were streams full of living fire. And they girt that house, and round about were seraphim, cherubim, and Hohanim. That's not one that we are too familiar with, but Enoch tells us that these hominid, these are the ones that do not sleep. Are you with me? They don't sleep. They are forever guarding the throne of Yah. That's in Enoch chapter 71. But I'm saying that for you to come with me to chapter 72. But I wanted you to see what happened to Enoch and where he was taken and what he saw. He said, I saw all the luminaries. I saw the sun and how it moves and it sets. So Enoch is telling us that the sun does move. They tell us, no, the sun is the center of the universe, and it is the other bodies that revolve around it. And so again, I must protest and say it is not cogent with the word of Yah. It is not. Come with me to chapter 72, verse 23. The sun rises from that third portal and sets in the third portal in the west, and returns to the east, and for 30 mornings rises in the second portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the second portal. He's telling you the month. Every time you see a new moon, it's a new month. Enoch says, I've been there, I saw it, and I'm telling it to you, believe it. That's what he's telling you. He says, I see it rise and I see it set. Meaning it's moving. They say it doesn't move. No wonder they take the book of Enoch out of the scriptures. But inquiring minds want to know. Are you with me? So, verse 24 of the same chapter, 72. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on that day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal and returns to the east in the first portal for 1:30 mornings. Notice, he's insistent. He's wanting you to know that every month has 30 days. He wants you to know that. You know, they teach us that 30 days at September, April, June, and November, and all the rest of 31. But that poor February, they just allocate to February 28 days. And he might get 29 in a leap year. That's what they tell us in school. Enoch says, no, it's not like that. At least it wasn't intended like that. And so that's why we have to stay with the calendar of Yahweh. We have to. Verse 25. And the sun rises on that day from the second portal and sets in the west on the second portal and returns to the east in the first portal for 1:30 morning and sets in the first portal in the west of the heaven. He's on a tour. And Yah is showing him everything so that he can send it back to earth. And we can learn this and understand the relationship between the heavenly bodies. Are you with me? And the influence, the orbital resonance that they have one for another. We've got to understand this. Otherwise, they will have us drift into that ocean of ignorance until you cry out and say, help, and there is no lifeboat. Now, let's read from verse 35, and I'm still in chapter 72, because I want you to get this. And this is the law and the course of the sun. Remember, we started in Joshua, and the issue is Joshua is telling the sun to stand still. Now, it would seem almost laughable for Joshua to tell the sun to stand still when the sun is not moving. Are you with me? They say it is the center of the earth and everything else revolves around it. Joshua is saying, sun, stand still. It's like saying, house, don't move. I'm inviting the house to speak to me. You know, it's almost ready to speak. It's saying, well, why would you ask me to move? And I've never moved. Are you with me? Verse 35, emphasis again. And this is the law and the course of the sun, and his return, as often as he returns 60 times and rises, the great luminary, which is named the sun. Get that? It's the great luminary. Forever and ever. And that which thus rises in the great luminary and is so named according to the appearance, according to what Yah commanded. Yah is the one driving this. As he rises, that's the sun, so he sets and decreases. Now, how could it move from the east to the west if it's not moving? Tell me. What they tell us is that it's the earth that moves and gives the appearance as if the sun is moving. Enoch. Everybody knows Enoch. He's a model to read and to study. As he rises and he sets and decreases not, and rests not, he what? Rests not. If you are not resting, you're on the move, aren't you? Mm-hmm. They said it's not moving, but runs day and night. And his light is sevenfold brighter than that of the moon. Did you get that? The sun's light is 7 times greater than the moon. That's not breaking news. We know that, right? But in regards its size, its dimension, they are both equal. Wait a minute. Enoch says the size of the moon and the size of the sun are the same dimension. These lettered men, they say the sun is 400 times greater than the moon. What must we believe? What must we believe? What should we believe? If the earth were surely a globe, that every line of latitude south, remember the north I'm presenting here, the North Pole is the center. Every latitude south of the equator would have the measure a gradually smaller and smaller circumference. It would be, has to be. And so the farther south you travel, the greater the circumference. Isn't it? In other words, the circumference at 10 degrees, we're coming to that, south latitude would comprise a smaller circle than at the equator. 20 degrees south latitude would comprise a circle smaller than 10, and so on and so forth. If, however, the earth is an extended plane, a circle, not a sphere, like a saucer, then every line of latitude south of the equator should measure gradually larger and larger circumference the further south traveled. 10 degrees south latitude would comprise a larger circle than the equator. 20 degrees south latitude would comprise a circle larger, 10, and etc., etc., etc. Likewise, if the earth were a globe, lines of latitude would bubble out of the equator while converging at both poles. Whereas if the earth is an extended plane, line of latitude should simply expand straight onwards from the north side, so which is actually the case. How? If the earth is a globe, then there would be curvature in the earth. As I read the book of Luke chapter 4 and Mark chapter 4, I am told that and Satan took Yeshua up on a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world. Implicitly in that statement, you can only see all the things in the kingdom if the earth is flat and not round. You couldn't see it if it was round. You couldn't. But they tell us that we have a North Pole and we have a South Pole. And no one has ever circumnavigated this thing. So what do you believe? Are you going to believe Enoch? Or are you going to believe others? You're dealing with people who have never been in the heaven. Enoch said, I've been there. I saw it. I went on a tour. Uriel took me on a tour, and I saw the great luminaries. I saw where they come from, and I saw their sizes, and the sun and the moon are the same dimension. What then do you do? You're in a dilemma, because your church is teaching the same thing. No difference. I think we must use ignorance as a metaphor to represent all people. We're all ignorant, but in different subjects. Isn't that right? So Joshua says, sun, stand still. Moon, stand still. He said, I want some more daylight, Father, so that the shine of it, the focus of it, the beam of it can be on the city of what? Gibeon. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say this is the earth. This is a watch. But it's the earth. It represents the earth in terms of our argument, or our discourse. And this watch, by the second hand, is continuously turning, revolving. And then you want the sun, which you say doesn't move, to put a beam on a city on the earth that is revolving. Watch the confused logic. You are telling the sun that doesn't move to stand still, but you say not a word to the earth that moves. How then do you get the beam from the sun to stay on a city that, or on an earth, or a planet as you call it, that is moving at 1,000 miles an hour? That's confused logic. And they know it. You know it too. It's just that you refuse to think. It doesn't work. Joshua says, earth, he didn't speak to the earth at all. If I see someone sitting there and they're quiet, there's no need for me to tell them to be quiet. Their response would be, but I didn't say anything. So Joshua's motive, his intent, is to speak to the one that is moving. He said, I want your light, your beam, your ray to be on a particular city, so I want you to stop. Watch the logic now. If the one that is moving stops, and the one that has never moved is still not moving, of course, obviously, the beam is going to be on that city. They tell us not. I don't care how many telescopes they use to look at it. All I need is my own eyes and an understanding that Yah has given me to see that it's the earth that doesn't move. Doesn't move. No, not at all. Doesn't move. But they want us to believe otherwise. And if I should bring myself to read Job 9 verse 8, shall we do that? Who by himself spread out the heavens, the Shemahim? Should I read Psalm 19 verse 1? The heavens, Shemahim, tell out the glory of Yah, the vault of the heavens. Reveal is what? His handiwork. Psalm 102 verse 25. The heavens were thy handiwork. Isaiah 45:12. I with my own hands stretched out the heavens, the Shemayim, and caused all their hosts to shine. Shall we continue? Isaiah 48 and verse 13. With my right hand I form the expanse of the sky, the Shemayim. Hey, hold it here. You know, as I think about this, I think of chapter 9, and I'm sure you do too, but if you're not, you soon will be, of Genesis, Bereshit. Why? Because Yah says that every time you see the rainbow, you know he's reminding us of his covenant with the earth. But that's not my point. Here's my point. Every time you see a rainbow, you see an arc, which tells you it is a reflection of the shape of the earth. That firmament comes over the earth as a dome, that circle that is flat. And so the rainbow arches and reflects that. And you're asking, is the world round? That's the everlasting covenant. Did you know? He made that covenant with whom? Not just Noah, with the earth. with the plants, everything. And so I'm compelled now to read 1 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 30. It said, he has fixed the earth, immovable. He did what? He fixed the earth immovable. It can't move. But you say, hold on. I learned in school that the earth revolves around the sun. The word of Yah, the great chronicler, says he fixed it and it's immovable. Well, you're having a problem with that? Let's talk to David. Psalm 93 verse 1. Thou hast fixed, here's that word again, thou hast fixed the earth immovable and firm. What? You see why I say this thing is not cogent? The science is not cogent with the text of the word. He says, thou hast fixed the earth immovable and firm. Now, we go to the same school, and you know what fix and firm means. Right? Okay, let's continue with David. 96 verse 10. He has fixed the earth firm, immovable. Why am I keep getting the same thing in the word of Yah? Well, let's go to Psalm 104 verse 5. Thou didst fix the earth on its foundation so that it never can be shaken. Never can be shaken. And of course, Isaiah 45 verse 18. Who made the earth and fashioned it, and himself fixed it fast. So the word has a tendency here to tell us that the earth is fixed and is not movable. That's what they're trying to tell us, these writers. And because the only reason we reject them, so it seems, is because they did not have a telescope. And yet their pineal gland was more than a telescope, if only we knew that. And so we just have to rethink what we have always thought. Because the question is very, very alluring to ask. How is it that this sun that doesn't move, so they say, is able to expand throughout region? Remember, the sun is full of heat. Are you with me? It's full of heat. So it doesn't give anything else. Are you with me? It's fire. But the earth, they say, moves. So my question is, if that's the case, and the earth is constantly moving, how is it that the sun, that has only heat, is able to allocate winter and summer? How? And the earth is constantly moving in the heat of its waves. How? Doesn't make sense. So, as we look on the horizon of time, we see that the moon is a victim of cosmic conflict. It is. Even as we have become victims of fallacious arguments. We are. We become victims of that. Oh, yes, no doubt. And we must rethink our thoughts. And so that day, that very day that Joshua commanded the sun to stand still. And then we read in Kings that Hezekiah wanted a sign. We read in Isaiah, linking the two texts, that Yah caused his sundial to move backwards 10 degrees. Now, for that to happen mean the earth would have to spin backwards. Are you with me? The earth would have to spin backwards for that to happen. But Yah is telling you, I stopped it. Wow. Now, they come up with all kind of arguments. They say, well, you know what happened in Joshua's time? It was an eclipse. I will eclipse that thought from my mind. Because you know in an eclipse it gets dark. What was Joshua asking for? Light. Joshua wasn't asking for darkness. He was asking for light. And light was what came to Joshua. So we will leave that aside. And, you know, it is nothing more than a farrago of baseless heresies. That's what it is. So let's go to Matthew. Matthew and that 27th portion of the book. We're still dealing with that day. That day. The word says, when the morning was come, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Yeshua to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Judah, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priest and elders. Many of us have sold out our souls to fallacious ideas and beliefs. And like Judas, we're now finding out that we have been miseducated. But I heard you. Don't do what he did. Don't do that. And he's saying, I have sinned. He what? Sinned in that I have betrayed innocent blood. We have rejected true teachings. And they said, well, what is that to us? That's what they said. And they were going to crucify the Messiah regardless. But Pilate, he saw, as we would say, the rake. He saw the plot. And he said, I have not found anything in this man. And they said to him, if you ever not send him over to the Romans to get him killed, you're no friend of Caesar. That's what they said. Remember, this man here, whom they're about to kill, according to the text, is the man who came to save them. He came unto his own, and his own received them not. Sometimes Yah send a preacher, a teacher, into our lives. And we just can't handle the truth. We shun them, disrespect them. And even now, when we reject the word, we're doing no less than disrespecting Yah. They want to kill him. And they were going to. And the word says in verse 27, then the soldiers of the governor took Yeshua into the common hall and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it onto his head, and the reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Now, let's look at that. This is the King of the universe. The breath that they were breathing while they were doing this is borrowed from him. We need to understand that. They are using his own breath to mock him. I'm really showing you what restraint look like. You know, sometimes people do things to you, and because you're restraining yourself, because vengeance is not yours, people think you're weak. No, that's strength. Strength is not biceps. Strength is the ability to control yourself when you have the power to do otherwise. Are you with me? So the breath that he loaned them, that they were breathing with, they were using it to mock him. And he could easily have taken that away, but he restrained himself in righteousness' sake, in obedience to his Father. He came for that purpose. We've got to understand that. So that man who drove past while you were driving your little slow car, and he went past at 80 miles an hour, and you feel a way that he cut you off. No. You are obedient to the laws of the road. You owe a duty of care to other road users. And that's how you conduct yourself. But not these people. They mocked him. Wow. Verse 30 says, and they spit on him. Wow. And took reed and smote him on the head. When I told you that we've been hit in the head, you think I'm joking. No, it's serious. Ignorance has hit us in the head. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off from him and put his own raiment on him and led him away to be crucified. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene. They found an African, in other words. You see, we have an investment in this salvation thing. A man from Africa is the one who carried the patibulum across his shoulder while the Messiah was being prepared for crucifixion. It's in the Word. Simon, by name, they compelled him. You know, oftentimes, they don't ask us kindly to do anything. Boy, do that. That's how they spoke to us during slavery. Come on, boy. It says they compelled this African to carry the cross. The crossbeam. And when they were coming to the place called Golgotha, you get that now. You get that now. Because this is the same place where King David earlier had taken the head of who? Goliath. The same place. Gol is from Gath. Golgotha. Now you understand why David did that. All right? When they came to Golgotha, that is to say the place of the skull, he took Goliath's skull there. Because Goliath was a forerunner to really, the one who really would be crushed at Calvary. Who was it who was crushed at Calvary? It wasn't Goliath. It was Satan. Are you with me? They gave him vinegar to drink and mingle with an opiate. We talked about an opiate crisis we have in America. They gave him an opiate. And when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. He would not drink. He would not drink. But I gave you all that framework, that background, that undergirding framework for this reason. It says, now from the 6th hour, verse 45, there was darkness over the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Yahweh cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, Maya. Notice he cried out twice rather than 3 times, because he's the other Yah. Are you with me? The angels sing, holy, 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 Father, Son, and Ruach. Now he says, Maya, Maya, why hast thou forsaken me? What's happening here? Because at this point, all that he can see is the tomb, the portals of the tomb. And he cries out, because never before has he ever been separated from his father. Never before. But sin now is creating a separation between he and his father, and all he can see is the black hole. Scientists talks about a black hole. But in the next breath, into thine hand, says he, I commend my spirit. That's what you call faith. That's faith. Faith is the things, what? Hope for. But you don't see the evidence yet. It's hope for. You're looking around corners. You don't see it, but you believe the word. Oh, yes. And they mocked him. It says, for 3 hours, there was darkness. The sun, that very sun, S-U-N, that Joshua said, stay still, is now saying, this man is the light of the world, and I cannot shine at this time when the very light of the world is being put out. The candlestick of the world is being put out. So, in resonance, sympathetic resonance, I will not give my light for 3 hours. And the word says that the veil of the temple, while Caiaphas and Annas were there, split in two. Are you with me? Give him the indication that, hey, you don't need to genuflect before ministers anymore, or priest or bishop. The gate is open. You can read the word, and I will teach you, says the Ruach. And you can understand this by yourself. And you don't have to subscribe to the idea that something is square when I tell you that it's round, and something is round when I tell you that it's oblong. No, you don't have to do that. The gate is open. The veil of darkness, of ignorance, has been removed. And they looked around, and the word says there was an earthquake. And the people were coming out of the graves. They saw all that and remained in unbelief. That day, no day like that day when the sun S-U-N, says that in cosmic sympathy, I will not give my light to the people because the great light, the S-O-N, is been mistreated by the very ones that he came to give light to. There's never been such a day. And that's why in John 8 and verse 11 he says, then spake Yeshua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. And therefore, I must conclude by saying, come ye children, hearken unto me, and I will teach you the fear of Yah. What man is he that desireth life and loveth many days, that he may see? Keep thy tongue from evil, and thy lips from speaking vile. Depart from evil. Do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Psalm 34, 11 to 14. In Yeshua's name, we come to understand no day like that day. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.